I think we've done really well with our website so far. We've built all of these pages, we've even looked at some extra things that we can do in there. One of the things, however, that comes up, and it's come up again in tonight's Collaborate, the whole aspect of CSS and how we can really maximize it. So I wanted to give you an example. This is going to be quick. We're just going to look at a new HTML page. I'm going to call it um, CSS class example, right? And when we save this page, we'll just say CSS classes. And what we're going to do inside all of the bits and pieces here, and this is even unnecessary. This is just a nice way of labeling it so that we know what it is. But let's pretend we're in design view. And let's pretend that this is the text that we wrote, right? So we wrote all that text ahead of time, which I did, and then we'll paste it in here, and that's our text. As far as the code's concerned, it'll put it all into paragraphs. So each one of these will get its own paragraph, because that's how it identifies these, even though we typed it in somewhere else. One of the main things here is I want to actually make that a heading 1. So I'll go to my properties panel, upgrade it from a paragraph to a heading 1, and close down that part of it. Again, all the code does is it changes the P to a H1. Like I could change this to a H2, close the hood, and that would work the same way. But that's not what we're trying to do, so let's just undo that. So when we get back to looking at the page, I want to know how can I actually specify some rules. Now the rules are CSS rules. If you know paragraph styles from InDesign, that's the concept. It's I'm going to create a rule and then I can apply the rule to multiple things inside of my design. In terms of what we're doing with the HTML page, we've got a CSS Designer Panel. This one asks, where do you want me to put the code? Well, I would like you to put the code in the actual page. Once we've decided on that, the code adds a little style tag in here. Then what we can do is we can select what it is that we want to style, such as this. We can go into our selectors and add a selector. This will pre-populate this selector name with the actual selector that we have. So in this case, the H1 inside of the body. But when we look at that, it's unnecessary to have the body in there. So I can do that. But if you want to just do whatever Dreamweaver's come up with for you, you can just do plus and use that. It'll work as well. Once you have the selector for that, we can then go and specify, and this will be ticked usually by default, so just untick it. And then you can specify in here the text. In the text you can say I want a specific color, so we might decide that we're going to have it blue, and it would make it that blue color. Again, in the CSS it would put that color in. But let's say I don't want that, so I'm just going to trash that. What I actually want is the font family here, and I'm going to pick Gotham, and then we're going to basically see that being updated on the page. At the same time, I want my paragraphs, so I'm going to add a style for my paragraphs, and again in here I'm going to say the paragraphs will be Baskerville. Why not? Baskerville. Done. And what we've done there is we've basically restyled components. So we've restyled the paragraph component as well as the heading 1 component. The reason I don't like body in there is because technically it looks at that and it goes, the body houses the H1, so therefore the CSS is the body which has a H1. It's unnecessary. So I usually just take it out and just have a H1 and a P, and then the definitions for them. The next thing that we want to look at, and again it updates it here for us as well, so it doesn't matter where you update it, it will do the job for you. The next one along, however, is different. The next one is basically me saying I want to add to here a specific thing, which is a class. So I want to put a class in. And a class is going to not be applied to a particular thing. It's not redefining anything that exists. It's creating this abstract idea of what I want to create. and I'm going to call it dot selected. Right? So that dot selected class looks like this. It's got its own little squiggly brackets. And inside of the dot selected, and remember you're just clicking on these to switch between them. You can see this is Gotham, this one has Baskerville, this one has no font definition. Selected as a class allows you to create this paragraph style of sorts, which means that we can go in here and say, look, any selections, tags, parts of the page that have this particular class that belong to this group will have a particular attribute. And those attributes that I want to set, and I never remember where they are in here. There you go. One of them is the background color. So I actually want that to be orange. And then I also want to have, what else do I want? I want the font color to be white. So I can either color pick white or type it in. Then the next thing along, probably I would do is play around with the padding, but I'm not quite sure on the padding dimensions yet, so I'm just going to leave it at that. Once I've created this class, I can go back to my properties panel, and then here I'll see that I have a class called selected. Because I have that class, I can now select the word second as an example and apply a selected class to it. I can also do that for the word my and do the same here. Now, because I've done that, Dreamweaver's attached these span classes around this, so it's just selected that text. But at the same time, what I can do in the selected option here is I can change the background to maybe red. And it changes on both because I'm changing the group. So all participants in the group change that particular color. I can change it back to orange, and everyone's back to orange. So then when we look at the layout options, and specifically the padding, what I can do here is specify that around the object. So I can just increment that up to maybe 9, and I'll have some padding at the top. Now if I lock it, and I set it to 9, all of the surrounding left and the right and the top and the bottom will have 9 pixels. And all that's happening in the code is it's adding all of these bits and pieces. So it specifies all of that. Now there's a shorthand version for padding. Obviously you can just leave it at that. That means all sides anyway. Dreamweaver doesn't know what your intention is, so it writes the longer version of the code, since you don't have to type it anyway. It just does that for you, so you don't have that shorthand kind of version. But it does the same job. If I change this to 5, you can see it changes all those variants to 5, and it becomes smaller. If I was to choose, I've got in the wrong one here. If I was to choose different sides, so I could have 15 pixels on the what side's that? That's right. Jeez. And then I have that much on the left, right? So 5, 5, 15, and 25. Dreamweaver then just breaks that up into these separate items again and specifies those different values. Same for margins. The only difference is if this was a margin, let's just trash this. If it was a margin, which is the one above it, then what we deal with is the space outside of the object. So they're the main differences between margins and padding. But again, we haven't written any code. The only code we wrote was that dot. We needed to know that we need to put a dot to create a group. But once we created that group, we're able to apply it pretty much anywhere. It doesn't have to be in a paragraph. Just need to go into my properties and apply that. And if I wanted to apply it to the whole tag, select the tag and apply it to the whole tag, and you get all of that extra margin applied to the heading as well. So if we then choose to go back in here and put some padding in, it starts to look nicer as well. And if I then decided that I want to have my text align to be center, it now centers that alignment as well. So some cool things that you can explore and do with classes, mostly because they encapsulate a concept, a design concept that you're trying to get across, that you believe will be represented across many elements in your actual page or your whole site. So it's worth kind of building them around replicating that kind of design thing, and it gives you that consistency, because you can see the font size still stays the same because the font size was not touched in the actual class. But if I was to go into the class and change the font, just to demonstrate, where's my size? There's my size. I can go and say, look, small, and all of the fonts will be the same size. The weight of that's going to be bigger because the heading already has a bigger weight, but if I change that to normal, now all the text is the same size. Now it's a different font, so if I went in and I overrode the font to something completely different like Impact, now you can see all the text is identical, it's in the same font, same weight, same style. Because the class will override any of the default properties here. And that's where you start getting really classy with CSS, because you're getting the best out of it. You know, it's overriding all of these properties which you've previously set. But if you don't set them, so you don't have these font family and weight and size options set, it will inherit the ones that were set up above, and therefore be bigger in different font size. So hopefully that helps. Definitely put some comments in below how you're finding all of this stuff, and yeah, we'll keep going on Monday.